Thank you. I will put that one away. Hello, my name is Vaiko Vahter. I'm from Finestmedia, and I'm going to talk about front-end from back-end perspective, where is the line? So the title is actually a little bit different. And this clicker. Okay. Whoa. So a little bit about me. I studied here in Tallinn University of Technology, computer and system engineering. As you can see from the field of study, I studied robotics and automation. So basically this is kind of my hobby, what I do on free time. And in software development, I have 6 years experience. So, have you seen this kind of design, or do you even remember this kind of design anymore? How many? Okay, good. But do you think that this kind of design even exists anymore? So basically, this design still exists. From left side, you can see buildimeister.eu site that is typical site from year 95. Basically, there is gray background, some green text, some red text, and of course, gradient header. And from the right side, you can see Cameron'sWord.net that is, I think, from the beginnings of 2000s. And then it was really popular to put moving things on the page and a lot of elements, so it had to be really mixed up. So this is currently only a short screenshot from the whole page. Actually, it is like much bigger and there are different sections. So these kind of things still exist. Actually, I had a better example from Estonia, but I think fortunately hot.de is now closed and all the legacy sites are down, so we don't have to look those sites anymore. Okay, I will go to the presentation now. I would like to give you the notice that I'm not going to talk about user experience or user interfaces in specific. I will give you examples and will tell you the typical mistakes that developers usually do in everyday basis. So I saw that there were a lot of developers. So how many of you are actually front-end developers? Okay, and who thinks that he's full-stack developer? Okay. Actually, I was attending a few months ago on Episerver conference where exactly the same question, who is full-stack developer, was asked. And it was kind of hard for me to answer that question because I always think that I'm full-stack developer, but I'm focusing on the back end. So should I raise hand or not? I raised the hand, and then the guy said that, okay, if you think that you are full-stack developer, then you are not good at anything. So you don't know back-end, you don't know front-end, so you are average guy, so you are in the middle. But it actually got me thinking that you always know something better, so you should always specify that, like me thinking that, okay, I'm full-stack developer because I know front-end, but I'm focusing on the back-end. So basically, you should specify that you are better at something, because otherwise you can't be the way that you know both equally, because there are a lot of things in programming that you have to know. And so I think it is always wise to know that you should specify or mention that you do something better, because when you say that you equally do things as good as you think, then probably it looks difficult or it's confusing to others. But why I'm here, if I think of myself as back-end developer, I'm here because on everyday basis I have to make code reviews and help other developers to write better code. So basically, I see a lot of problems that occurs from the beginning when the developer is, for example, still junior. So I would like to point out those mistakes so you can avoid those mistakes in future and write the better code. So first, I would start with application Fiidlo. So it was a few years back. We had this kind of project in Finestmedia, and there were two different environments basically. One was front end for the client, so the client had the website or apps to do something there, and then there was back end or so-called back office, what was for administrators. So for front end, we used Ionic, and Ionic is focusing on building native hybrid mobile apps rather than mobile websites. So basically, it means that we got responsive web, Android, and iOS app. So it was pure JS, JavaScript application, and of course you needed Cordova there, but the code were all in JS. And for backend, we used Meteor, that is JavaScript platform for developing modern web and mobile applications. And there were actually only a website, and all the data were held in the MongoDB. So we have two applications, and they are both pure in JS. So where is the backend? Is this development backend developer job or front-end developer job? So how we know who have to develop it? So basically, where is the line? I have been in different projects, and I had cases when developer says that I'm a front-end developer, I don't have to do it. But now we have a pure JS application, no PHP, no Java, no .NET, anything there. So this is JS. JS is for front-end, so who have to do it? Where is the backend? So should the front-end developer understand or change the so-called backend, or is it even important to see the whole picture or understand what's happening in the backend? So what do you guys think? Any opinions? Should the front-end developer understand the backend, or where is the line? Anyone? Okay, one no. Okay, good point. Actually, my answer is line is blurry, because you can't say that you have to know exactly like you said, no, because yeah, there can be some cases that you don't have to know. But actually, my personal opinion is, yes, you should know, because you can't find out the best technical solutions when you don't know what's wrong or what's happening actually in the backside. For example, for front-end developers, something may look logical. For example, here we have something, and here we have another thing, and the front-end developer can think that, okay, we can connect these two things. But actually, in the backend, there is no connection between those two, and you should understand why you can't connect them or what's wrong there. So you just can't assume that, oh, backend developer don't want to do it. And I think even better example is validation. Basically, you can change user interface a little bit in the process, so you can hack user interface and you can skip the validation part. So when I send there like random stuff, then the backend part should be the so-called core stuff that will validate the thing and have to be sure that everything is correct there. So, but when the front-end developer will see those edge cases and will know that, okay, here maybe user can do something, and there always are some edge cases. So basically, what should the front-end developer do? Should he or she just skip it and think that, okay, it's not my job to do it, it's backend developer job, or how it should be. Actually, I think that the easiest way is that the front-end developer will try to understand the backend side a little bit, so he can or she can check the code on his own, and if he don't understand, then he can ask from the backend developer, and maybe they even can look it together then, and next time front-end developer can solve this problem on her own and check if everything is covered. So basically, you can't say no or yes, because you can push the line there, because you are deciding where is the line. So now I will give you some examples what's happening on everyday basis. So it's typical case that client wants something. So basically, client says that he wants something, and you get the design, for example. And there is the typical case is that the client only provides desktop view. So they forget that current web development is responsive, but they actually even doesn't have to know it, that they have to provide it. So, and another case, you can say that the analyst should know, but they can forget too. So basically, I think if something is missing, then the front-end developer have to be the one who will take the responsibility. So I have had some cases when developer had said that, but it wasn't in the ticket. So when I asked why there is no responsive view, why it's only for desktop, then he said that, but it wasn't in there was no information about in the task, and I didn't do it because it wasn't in the task. So I think that is not the attitude what the front-end developer should have. So if something is missing, then you should communicate. And even more, I think it's important that you will communicate with client, and you will learn that communication. So you will actually understand what you are doing and why you are doing something, to do not just do something because it will not give a best result. Another thing that I often see when I make code reviews is that developers, especially young developers, don't know about promises and chain. So I used here jQuery example. From the left side, you can see the basic Google result. I think it was actually first result, Stack Overflow result. So you can see that it's making a simple AJAX request to the URL, and if it's successful, then it's doing something, and if it's not, then it will probably display an error. From the right side, you can see that it looks already more complicated, but readable, and it is reusable. So basically, you can see there is a function getData. You pass there two parameters, URL and data, and it will return promise. So basically, it means that when we make a request to the backend, then you promise that you will do something with that later, and we can execute on the page other stuff, so it's asynchronous. So basically, from down there, you can see that we are passing their URL, so city URL, and empty object, so no extra parameters. So basically, this example is about addresses. So imagine that you would like to fill a drop-down or select with a list of cities. So basically, when you make the request and get back the data, then you will realize that, okay, I can't use it right away. I have to maybe format it first. So you will call the function format city data. So first you will format the data, and then you will pass this data to the done handler. So basically, you will fill the cities, so fill the actual select box on the site. And if something went wrong, for example, I don't know, backend gave you bad request or something like that, then you can show extra information, maybe please fill the city field manually. So basically, another thing that is that I would like to point out here is that the done handler there, you can see that we are calling fill cities function that is callback, but typical thing is that the explanation is that I can't use that one because maybe I want to pass there an extra parameter and it all happens there dynamically. So if you want to pass there something, you can always use bind. So basically, if I want to pass the container there, then always there will be a container with that solution. So basically, fill city's first argument is container, and the next one will be the data that's coming from the format city. So basically, what I wanted to say here is that if you have to put this code from the right side from to the left side, then you will have probably, okay, you can do it. The current example, you will have basically a function there and you call inside the first function and then another one. But if you have like more logic there, so it is currently easy example, then you will have a lot of functions there and it's not, I think it's not anymore readable anymore, and actually you can't reuse it. Usually this kind of left kind of solution will end up a huge function inside the success, and you can't maintain it anymore. So, and here we get to the next point, write readable code. Most of the developers' work is not writing the new code, but maintaining the existing one. So read more than write. That means that you will end up reading much more code than writing one. So always optimize your code for other developers. No one wants to develop software that is in bad shape, so they don't understand it, and you will end up on a project where no one wants to do it. And I think even when you write readable code, then another thing that is quite important is to write code comments. Typically, developers will write what they do in the code, but actually they shouldn't write what they do in the code. We can read it from the code. Actually, the doc block there or the documentation or comments there should say what the function or method should actually do, not what it is doing currently, because if there is a bug and another developer have to look it, then he don't understand it because he looks everything is working, because you are written what you did there, not what it should do. So always think before you write some comments, because it's not just writing a comment, it is writing a reasonable comment there. Another thing about comments is Git comments. Usually we use for versions, we use Git, so we want to manage the code. So basically from the right side you can see a short but I think understandable message. So I have seen a code where over 100 commits basically, and they all had something similar that made a fix. So what I fixed or where is the relation, I don't understand it because there is no information what you changed. So if you have to track a bug or there is a problem with your application or the system, then you want to understand what the previous developer did there. So basically good practice is to add at first task number, so you will know what kind of ticket or task you had, so you can look back the reference to there, or you will read what happened there. So basically this example is adding missing Git introduction to the user guide. But basically there is readme file and added the missing Git introduction. So basically that says what change I made there. So basically I changed readme file. And another point there is that the recommended Git commit message size is 50 characters or less. So if you want to add more text, then you should add it to the description, but you shouldn't write the whole story for the message, because you can't see, for example, you can see from user interfaces, they will cut it off, or so you can't quickly search something. You want to know what was up with that commit, and then you can decide Was it the reason why something like is broken or not? And from the left side, you can see one example that I wrote there that is not readable code. So actually, this example is from one of my professors from university. There was a case, there was a company that had a developer, so he did everything perfectly, so they didn't complain, so he was sitting on his place doing everything, the system worked, nobody cared. So one day he decided to move, so he left the company, and other developers had to take over his project or projects. So basically, the thing was that they had to rewrite the whole project because nobody understood that code. And the main reason, for example, the first main reason that was the developer had Russian background. So basically, he knew Russian, he knew English and Estonian. And basically this pivo, beer, and õlu example is like perfect one. So basically you mix up the variables and then later you can understand your system, but later other developers don't even know what's happening there because they don't understand if it's the same thing or not. And maybe sometimes you mean something else when you use pivo and sometimes you use õlu there. So basically there is no point to write that kind of code. So you should always decide what language you will use to define your variables or functions. So I think personally that the best way is to use English, then everyone will understand it. So next one is alt and title tags. You all have seen those alt tags and title attributes in the code. So basically, title tag should add an extra call to action information for the image, for example. So basically, the title tag is the one when you hover over the image and you see some pop-up there. So basically, if you put there some random text, then there is no point. So, for example, if you have Samsung SH user manual button there and a pretty icon, then you should want to add the extra call to action text that will pop up. For example, download Samsung SH user manual. But sometimes you should consider if it's even reasonable to add this title attribute because it's not required. So basically, it means that when you, for example, we have down there Finestmedia logo. So basically, when you add there, in my case, the title attribute, then when you hover over it, you can see Finestmedia logo. So is it like reasonable to do or not? Maybe for a Google site, yeah, but there can be a lot of logos on the page and you don't want to point them out, so you don't want that user will focus on that one. So you should always consider if it's reasonable to add it or not. In other cases with alt attributes, alt attributes have mainly two purposes. First is SEO, it's search engine optimization. So basically Google robots will crawl over your site and get the text, and when you search something, then if you have necessary keywords there, then you will be on the top of the Google, basically. And another thing is blind people or visually impaired people. So basically, it means that when they use screen readers, then they have to listen what is on the site and what's happening there. And also another case is that what happens if you don't want to write the alt tag, but it's required. So you should always add alt tag, and when you don't know what to add there, then you add the alt attribute and you will just use quotes, so you left it empty. So basically, why it is useful? It is useful because then screen readers will skip it. And another thing is that you will, when you remove this attribute, but it actually is a required attribute, then the web optimization tools will start screaming and you are missing some elements. So for example, Google can give you a penalty for that. So basically you will be lower in the in the results because your site is not standardized. So basically, I have another example here. So some time ago, I made a code review, and the task was adding alt attributes to the images. So basically, there was an user manual image. So you can see the icon there. There are two icons because the case is that when you hover over with the mouse, then it changes color. So basically, it's used in the same way. So you hover over it, then orange icon turns to blue. And he added two text there: orange user manual and blue user manual. Imagine now that someone would like to Google Samsung SH user manual and how he will end up Googling orange user manual. So it's kind of funny, but it's really life example. So you should always think what you write there. You can't just add text there because somebody said that put their alt tag. So basically, the alt tag should describe what is on the image or what is the purpose of the image, what the image will do or the button image will do. So basically, the OK string to write there is button to download Samsung SH user manual. So when the blind people will use screen readers, then he or she will know that if I click that button, I can download the Samsung SH user manual. And also there are necessary keywords for Google robots. So basically, if you use orange user manual, then the robots are blind too because they don't know what's the meaning of the text. They just will put it on their search engine, and when someone searches orange user manual, maybe it will pop up. But yeah, that's not the point. You want to be optimized, and you want that all the clients, for example, blind people or the ones who will search from the Google, will understand what's on the site. So another thing, you can see the code from the left side and code from the right side. So basically, what you can say about the left side code, who knows what's wrong there? Anyone? Okay, basically you can see that there are two extra div elements. Actually, they don't do anything. They are just there, but it works, so why bother? I have seen a lot of cases when developers, like front-end developers, try to do something with the user interface and finally will leave some elements there. So it doesn't change it, so no big deal. Why I should remove those? But when the, for example, main page or start page will start growing and you have a lot of things there already, then you will have too much elements on the front page. For example, optimization tools will start screaming. For example, Google Lighthouse will say that you have too many elements on the site. And another point is that when you think that we use responsive websites, so basically it means that we use mobiles and you have mobile internet. So basically, if you are somewhere in the woods and you have only 3G internet, then you always add extra bytes to download because every character counts there. And if you have the whole page, like a lot of extra div elements there, then it means that you have to download more content and the customer have to wait even more. So basically, you should always look the code over after you finished it. So make the first review on your own, so then you will know if there is something extra or not. So basically, it may not be a big deal at the beginning, but when the site is up for years and you will add extra and extra content, then it will be definitely a case. So let's get a little bit more technical. O notations. So basically, O notations provide you the way to quickly assess the speed or performance of an algorithm. And I have often seen that a lot of developers don't know about it or haven't used it. And I will give you 3 simple examples. So basically, those 3 you should know. First one is O1, second one is ON, and the last one is O(n) square. So basically, O1 means constant. It means that the time is constant and it will always take the same amount of time. So basically, I added the diagram so you can see it's constant. And from down there, you can see there is an array with elements 1, 2, 3. And when you are accessing the array 0 with the index 0, so basically the time is always constant to get the value for that. So it doesn't matter how many elements are in the array. So if there are a million elements, then it will always take the same time to find out that what is that element. So this is basically the best scenario, so it won't take much time. Next one is linear time. Basically, I would like to compare it with reading emails. So the more emails you have, the more time it will take. So basically, you have to look over all your emails. So basically, it will take more time. So you can see from the diagram that it's growing. More you have, more time will it take. So basically, the simple example here is for loop, or it can be something else. So the for loop currently is like best example. So basically, we have this array 1, 2, 3, and we only think that this loop is doing is like printing out 1, 2, 3 to the screen. So basically, more elements you have, the longer it will take. And the third one is quadratic time. Represents an algorithm whose performance is directly proportional to square of the size of the input dataset. So basically, sounds more complicated already, but actually, it's not that complicated. The typical example of that is bubble sort. So I think if most of you are like with the developer background, so you have learned the bubble sort in school. So basically, you have there two loops, one is inside another, and the only difference with the previous one is that if here we printed out 1, 2, 3, then here we print 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So basically, you can see from the diagram that the time will rise more rapidly. So basically, it means that I will try to explain it a little bit better what this n square means. So compared with the linear time example, we had 3 elements there, 1, 2, 3. So basically, n square means that we had 3 elements, so it equals 9. So currently, we printed out 9 elements. So this is the relation there, how this n square, we got this n square. So the point here is actually why I'm talking about it, is that you should always consider when you're writing code if there are some performance issues. I have seen from the code that sometimes developers use 2 loops. Actually, if it's not necessary, they don't have to use 2 loops. Imagine that you have an array with million elements and you use 2 loops, it will take more and more time. So if you add more elements, then it will even take longer. So sometimes there are cases when you can use this first example where it was constant. So basically, this array accessing here, array j with the index is constant because it's using reference. And another one in JavaScript is basically object. You can use keys to access things. Or when we look at other languages, then in PHP there is associative arrays, and in .NET there can be dictionary or hash set or something like that. So basically, you should always think how much it will take time if you write something. So at first it will make work, but over the time the elements count will grow and the system will get slower. So you don't want to slow down your system. So this is one thing that I thought that it is good to mention here, because some of you are students and you actually don't know it yet. And another good thing about that is it helps to actually pass the coding test, because if you think that way, then you will always try to find more optimized way. Yeah, you can always say that this is the most easiest way to do it, but is it the most optimal way to do it? So you can think about those 3 O notations and and try to figure out if it's reasonable to do it that way or not. So next thing here, what I would like to say is that do not do everything on your own. I have an example, real-life example. When I started software developing, then we had a project. It was in another company, not in Finestmedia, and the case was that we did everything our own. So basically, at first I thought that the only way to get the best result and most secure code is write everything on your own. So basically, soon I realized that it's not possible because you have community. You can get some things from the internet, and it will be much cheaper to develop it that way, because if you want to do everything on your own, then you basically will need bigger organization and you will have to have a lot of more money. So basically the case there was that we had those swipe events developed on our own, and every time when there was a browser update, there raised a lot of problems. So basically it means that for every version update for a browser, we had to check like all the browsers if it's still working, if you made there any changes. And even the worst case for me was that we used those touchscreens on the walls. So basically users made their applications and checked their schedule there and so on. So basically when something was broken there, then I had to go to the client's office and connect all my mouse, keyboard, and all the stuff, and then start debugging. So it wasn't cool anymore. So it was wasting more time. So you should always use the community who helps you solve the problems and find the bugs. So in some cases, yeah, you can't do it, but most of the cases, I think it's pretty good way to do it. And another example there is responsive style elements. So basically, in the same project, there was no framework. So basically, everything was, when you wanted to do something, for example, columns, responsiveness, you had to do it on your own. So if you wanted to get the form responsive, you had to figure out the way how to do it. But currently, and at that time, there was a lot of frameworks already available. But the main thing that the architect there at the time mentioned that no, we can't use those because they are too slow, and we have to use, for example, with Bootstrap, it's like typical that you have to use jQuery and so on. But there are a lot of frameworks that don't need the certain JS, so you should look what's existing there, and maybe it's not reasonable to do everything on your own. So for example, Pulma, there is no JS required, so you can decide which one JS framework you will use. So, and finally, I will tell you a little about third-party libraries. When you open the GitHub, then you can see that there are a lot of libraries. So basically, I had a case when I made a code review, then the task was to find swipe events, but because the project was leaving the jQuery and moving to another JS framework, then the main thing was that it can't be jQuery. And the developer, of course, decided to use that plugin, that is jQuery plugin. But when I asked why he picked this plugin, he said that it's really easy to implement and it's understandable. So basically, I tried to explain him what's wrong here, so I will do the same here. So basically, from that GitHub page, you can see that I have highlighted some places. So basically, there were 13 commits. So basically, okay, it can be new library, so maybe there are bigger commits or something like that. So it's not a big deal, but it is the first sign. So when you check how big the community is behind it, then you can see that only one person is doing that. So it's not really helpful. Then it means that you can do it on your own, and you still have to check everything on your own. And when we check those issues, then we can see that there are 4 open issues, and they are from 2016. Currently it's 2019, so it means that nobody is maintaining that one anymore. And also, if I remember correctly, there were pull requests, and they were from 2015. So, so nobody was maintaining that one anymore, and the browsers are always updated, so you can't be sure that it's working in the Safari or not. So, and another thing that you should check is tags. So basically, if it's like community-based library, then typically there are versions. So you know what changed there, you have some changelog and so on. That kind of application had only one branch and no versions. So another sign that is showing some alerts there. And finally, I checked the commits, and I saw that last update was from 2017, and it was README file update. And the commit before that was from 2015, and it was updating README file title. So basically, no one maintained that one anymore. So if something looks easy to implement and understandable, it doesn't mean yet that it's worth to use it, because you can mess up the entire system and you still have to do everything on your own. So, and the last thing that I would like to mention here, what may be a problem if you use those third-party libraries is when you use NPM. So basically you can download these kind of plugins, and if there is some relations with suspicious packages, then it means that you will harm entire system. So basically you can mess up entire project. So sometimes easy implementation isn't the best thing, and you should always consider versions, commits, and community behind it. Thank you.
So the questions then. You talked a lot about performance. What is the most surprising problem that you have encountered that affected performance?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
What's the most surprising problem that you encountered that affected performance?
Surprising, okay. Actually, the surprise for me was the div example thing, because I didn't thought about that before I had this case when I had to optimize something, because someone said that, okay, maybe you can check this code because there are problems with elements count. So when I start checking, then I discovered that there are a lot of empty elements that actually you don't need for the web page. So basically, it has not so big performance issue, like I mentioned earlier. It has performance issue for mobile sites, but it was like really, really surprising for me that developers don't think what can cause some extra elements can cause.
What should a beginner front-end developer begin building her or his stack with?
It's hard to hear because everything is like...
Okay. What should a beginner front-end developer begin building his stack with?
What he should use?
Yeah.
Okay. It depends on the project. It's hard to say what he or she should use, because there are a lot of frameworks. Like I mentioned, there is like CSS frameworks, Bulma, Bootstrap, and like previously mentioned here, React and Vue and so on. So basically, it's up to you, because if it's like small application, you can use Vue, for example, and Bulma, so you don't need to do much. But if it's like bigger, you can use React, for example, and so on. It depends on the case. It's hard to say, like, it's the best one, use that one.
Okay. Well, I don't have any more questions on Ask.Duke, but does anyone have any questions that they want to ask right now? No one? Okay. Well, then thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.